Hello. My name is Anthony Ha. I am a senior writer for TechCrunch, and we are going to have a good discussion, I hope, about storytelling and mobile. I mean, I think the idea sometimes when we think about these new advertising technologies and breaking it down to these little screens and cookie cutter and these very short videos, that they maybe doesn't leave room for storytelling. But I think we're going to have some good discussion about that. Just to start things off, why don't we just get on the line, and each of you can tell us who you are, your name and your title.
Yeah. Hi, guys. I'm Antonio. I'm the CEO and founder of Cubic, a location intelligence and measuring company that helps brands in mapping the consumer journey in the physical world, leveraging our proprietary location database.
Hi, my name is Graham Monroe. I'm the general manager of Shutterstock Custom. I started a company in Toronto, Canada about 4 years ago called Flashstock. Grew very quickly, 100 people, and were just acquired by Shutterstock, and now I'm Shutterstock Custom.
Hi, my name is Andy Stevens. I run research and insights at Clear Channel Outdoor, which is the largest billboard company in the world, and I'm very interested in ways that we can use data to enhance our offering.
Hi, I'm Kai. I'm the Worldwide Chief Creative Officer and co-chairman of Ogilvy Mather.
Good afternoon. My name's Tom Lapsevic, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at 24 Hour Fitness. We have health clubs throughout the country.
I worked out this morning.
There you go. There you go. So I promise you we're not going to have too many go all the way down the line questions. But we'll start with one, which is let's just address the big, the topic, which is just maybe just to get the discussion started. Each of you can identify one of the ways that you've seen mobile changing either the way you tell stories or the way marketers are telling stories. Just to mix things up a little, why don't we start with Tom? We'll go down this way.
All right, great. Like I said, we run health clubs across the country. We have about 4 million members overall. And our mission is to improve lives through fitness. And to get people started on a fitness journey, you really have to inspire and motivate them. So fortunately, we have millions of people working out every day in our clubs, changing their lives. They are overcoming health challenges, losing weight, getting ready for a wedding, getting ready for a Spartan run. So a whole bunch of different reasons why they're in there. And, and our goal is to capture those stories, curate them, and then share them with others so we can inspire them to do the same. We're real fortunate because people love to be on social media inside our health clubs, so they capture their stories. And we've been fortunate to have some really great location-based technology, social listening, where we can essentially identify those stories, pull them in, use our production studios to really bring those to life, and then really leverage our omni-channel approach to reach people, do lookalike modeling, and inspire others to get started with fitness. So it's been mobile has really changed the way that we capture stories, we produce them, and we deliver them. So it's been a wonderful ride over the past couple of years.
Awesome. I know you brought some examples, but let's go down first, and then we'll dig some more into those examples. Kai, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I think. Well, thank you. I worked out as well this morning.
Oh, good. You're all looking incredibly fit right now. I just want to say, right? They look pretty good, solid.
I think first and foremost, we are storytellers. I say we in a huge way because we came out of the caves telling stories. Before we domesticated the wolf, we were telling stories, and we were telling stories to survive. Today, brands are telling stories to thrive. So we build brands at Ogilvy Mather, and we also sell products on the short term. So you sell products overnight, and you have this brand mission that you work on over time, overnight and over time. And in between, you are actually working on all that narratives, the stories that our brands have. And stories, as we all know, they have a narrative. There's a story arc. There's always a protagonist. There's a hero. And there's emotion. So I would like to show you 2 pieces of work today later and talk about how those emotions, those short stories can move people as you do with your apps. And not all mobile have stories. We understand that. Some are apps. And as long as they have utility, as long as it's useful, like your app is, but our job really is to find those great narratives and to help push that out. I think it'll be an interesting conversation, I hope.
Absolutely. So data has been incredibly transformative for us at Clear Channel. If you think about billboards, it's the largest form of advertising medium. There's no bigger screen, and it's completely unskippable. They're sort of iconic parts of the fabric of our city. And yet, when I joined Clear Channel a few years ago, the biggest complaint that I heard is, well, I get that, but it's, we can't measure it. We're not very targeted. I can do all these things in online. And mobile data is really what's allowed us to change that. So capturing location data from people like Antonio and using that to help better understand who the audience is, who's exposed to billboards, profile them, use that information to then measure campaign performance. So it's really kind of bringing a traditional medium into the digital age using data.
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we see with the big brands is struggling with the change. So it's a real change management exercise. So the narratives that you're describing, the storyteller or the protagonist, they fit into the bigger 30, 60-second sound bites. But organizationally, how do you scale that? How do you break that into small chunks where you keep the consistency that aligns to the brand so it's cohesive to the consumer and makes sense? And that's the big challenge that we run into all the time.
I didn't work out this morning. Sorry about that. And probably I'm the most data geek here. So I believe in data. That's my job. That's my background. That's what I do. And I believe that creativity and creative teams can actually benefit from data for shaping and personalize better stories and improve storytelling. So mobile can definitely unlock a new wave of data which didn't exist until a few years ago. Data from social media, as Tom said, so capability to understand the interests of people and do lookalike modeling based on what they share on social networks. Location data to map the consumer journey in the physical world. We're used to mapping the consumer journey in the online world, but now the mobile technology can allow us to do that in the physical world in a privacy-compliant way, empowering the user who can choose if you want to be part of these analytics efforts anonymously or not. So these analytics can really help in understanding better consumers, in understanding what they want, and in providing very valuable insights to creative teams and CMOs teams in order to shape better and personalized stories. So that's, for me, the mobile is changing because of the new data wave that is generating, especially when it comes to the offline world.
I've put Kai on the spot for a second. So a lot of data conversation with mobile, and we had an interesting conversation backstage where kind of the art of telling stories, and the question was, when you think about that brand story, that big story that you're going to tell, what percentage of it is driven from a data set versus gut and intuition?
Wow, I think that's a great question.
That is a great question, yes.
Look, we work on Unilever Dove. And in the year 2005, we were informed by Insight that Unilever pushed out across Canada, US, and Europe, and parts of Asia, asking how women felt about themselves, about their bodies. Only 4% came back saying that they are beautiful. Only 4%. Now, armed with that insight, we started developing the Self-Esteem Fund for Dove, a campaign for real beauty. It started in 05, 06, 07, during those formative years. And those days we used to call them insight. Today we call them data, right? So there's a change of term there.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because those are a set of references and analysis that drives, well, it is an insight, a human truth that we were tasked to articulate. Then we brought up the stories. 3 years ago, Dove Beauty Sketches.
Absolutely.
And so on. So we still use a lot of insights. That will not change. Today we call it data. Does that answer your question?
It does.
I mean, and it's a great thing because you do need the insights. And then you have to write the narrative with that insight. So that will not change.
And so I think we do have some examples that speak to that, but partly because of the way the presentations are queued up. I do want to get back to the data discussion in a second. I do think there's sort of a few broad themes that have kind of emerged, and also in our discussion beforehand, sort of around omni-channel, around short-form content, and around data. And I think, Tom, you had some examples that maybe speak to some of, I mean, there's probably a lot of overlap between these themes as well, but,
Sure.
but particularly just sort of that idea of sort of mobile fitting into this omni-channel storytelling.
We really do use a highly diversified, yet completely integrated omni-channel approach. And we also distinguish between push and pull media, short form versus longer format. So we have our, as an illustration, we have our digital magazine where we engage people, our in-club TV networks, our social media influencer network, our mobile apps, radio channels on iHeart and on Pandora, a lot of experiences. So we use a lot of different channels to engage people differently. Mobile's at the heart of most of that, as well as data. Everything we start with hypotheses. We think we know what we should or shouldn't be doing with respect to a certain persona or segment, but really we learn very quickly through machine learning and data as to what is the right channel for the right audience, what's the right content, and then we measure everything for performance. But yeah, everything we do is a real omni-channel approach. And what's really interesting, and again, data drove us to this, is there's so much, especially in fitness, there's so much, I don't want to say clutter, there's a lot of great content, but there's just a ton of content on social and digital. And we went back to traditional media, of using out of home, using radio to differentiate. Sounds crazy, so we did that so we can differentiate our digital and social channels. And then we started incorporating mobile and location-based technology into our out-of-home. And with that, we really have created an incredible omni-channel approach as to how we engage people, and just as importantly, how we measure it. And we measure everything we do.
So in terms of the billboards that we're seeing right now, I mean, how does that then tie into some of these, into like mobile and some of these other channels we're talking about?
It's great. I mean, we view billboards as that short-form push communication that really is that top of the funnel tie into a story. So if we're promoting a certain type of activity, event, we use billboards, we use radio to start the conversation, but then we drive them to our longer format channels to do a more in-depth, to develop a more in-depth understanding. A good illustration is how we use digital workouts. So we'll present something on a billboard of a Les Mills grit program, and then we deliver the actual workout through digital, social, email marketing, so people are aware of it, and then they get to experience it. So they overcome the intimidation of coming into a club by delivering into their home a workout. They become comfortable, and now we can retarget them and pull them into the club. So it's a really powerful omni-channel format that we apply.
Andy, do you find that with a lot of the advertisers you're working with, that they do see billboard as part of this larger strategy, or is that something that you're sort of having to sort of push them towards now?
I think obviously it varies, but what's happened over the years is because of the traditional lack of data, out-of-home has been transacted more as a piece of real estate. So people buy it because it's on an expressway or in a neighborhood they like. And it still is a piece of real estate. Times Square ads that you see are, what makes them amazing is the fact they're in Times Square and they have this great presence. That said, using mobile data, we've been able to help uncover much more granular audience insights. And in turn, advertisers can then use those insights to actually think of out-of-home more as an audience delivery vehicle in the same way they would with other advertising channels. So we're starting to see more and more adoption of that, working with people like 24 Hour Fitness, using those insights to help inform where should we actually place those out-of-home ads. And we're seeing more and more adoption of that. Plus, then the measurement on the other side, insights that we derive from that can then be used to further optimize placement.
And Tom, I mean, one of the things you were saying was this idea of using out-of-home as a differentiator on top of all these things. I mean, do you want to talk a little bit more about why, especially, as consumers, we see billboard ads all the time. Why is that a differentiator?
Well, again, there's a lot of noise on social media and digital with fitness. It's a highly competitive industry right now. We do a lot of testing. We do a lot of A/B testing, multivariate testing. And what we've seen is when we integrate out of home and radio, coupled with all the highly targeted, segmented communications that we do, there's a significant difference. It's a very material difference. And then the ability to track through the Clear, in the case of Clear Channel, radar, of being able to track the mobile devices past those boards, how many of those are coming into our clubs, what's the difference before the campaign, after the campaign. It gives us incredible insight as to whether a particular board, and just as importantly, a particular communication on that particular board is the right communication for that audience that's going past that out-of-home asset. So it's been incredibly insightful as to what's the best way of packaging media and using this multimedia approach.
I think one thing I would add to that, I often think about my own media consumption habits. So, I don't have cable. I have a Netflix account. I listen to the radio. I have a Spotify account. I consume my news on my mobile device. I have an ad blocker, on my desktop. So there's actually a lot of
I can't believe you said that on stage here. Wow,
I'm
okay.
out of home. So out of home actually is one of the few channels that has, there's no way to block it really apart from closing your eyes. So it does kind of cut through, but in a non-interruptive way. If we have good creative, it's well targeted, it doesn't have to be something that's annoying that gets in the way of your experience. So there's some inherent benefits to the medium, I think.
So one of the other things I wanted to talk about, as I mentioned, was this idea of that on smartphones, right, everything's getting shorter. It's much more about the snackable content in terms of video. It's like, think of, don't do like a 3-minute video, do like a 30-second video or even shorter and have subtitles. And I think, even beforehand, we were having a discussion about short form. And is that really storytelling? And I think, Grant, you actually had some examples of how you were able to tell stories in that very short format.
Yeah, so it's like the fundamental challenge is people aren't going to watch a 30, 60-second ad to watch a 15-second piece of content. And forcing them to do that is just like a horrible experience. And so you have to recognize that you got to fit it into shorter formats. And again, Kai, we had an interesting discussion where to tell like that full story arc in 3 seconds is pretty much impossible. But the subtlety that I picked up was, as a brand, when you're trying to be prescriptive with your story, that's one thing. However, if you're trying to basically set a framework where people can interpret the image and tell their own story and understand how that applies to their lifestyle. So we've got a couple pictures that we've created for some of our clients that tried to do that. If they're going to get queued up. The subtlety, though, as a brand, is when you take that big, high creative concept and then you start scaling it and breaking it down and testing different versions, you have to stay true to the visual identity. And that sounds like a very abstract thing, but it's things like the technical aspects of an image, the subject matter, the props. You want to maintain that framework of consistency and then cycle through different versions to align to that story. And so if I asked the entire audience here, how do you interpret that image? There's a story there, and it's going to be subjective to your own experience and your own frame of reference. When I look at it, it's like, I'm hanging out with my buddies at the bar, drinking Appletons, and it's a nice sunny day, and you can get into the story if you want to cycle through for the next one. So you can see this is Chipotle. They're about fresh food, and so like their constant is like lots of colors, vibrant, targeting a millennial audience that wants to eat healthy while on the go. And one final one. Band-Aid. So this is an interesting one where being a mom is messy or a dad is messy, and so you don't want to overproduce it, but you want to set a framework where you can tell an authentic story. And these sort of small chunks, top of the funnel, will drive that, especially in a mobile environment.
And so what is the context in which people are seeing these images usually?
Well, think about how you behave on a phone. So you pull it out of your phone, you're kind of bored, you're spending most of your time within an app, 90% of that time is within an app, and what's the difference between an app and search? It's stuff's getting pushed into your face. And so your mindset is discovery. And so you've had a rough day, your eye is going to capture things that resonate and then draw you into a broader narrative. And so this notion of a trailer that is top of the funnel just becomes really important. And then as you move down the funnel, forget about storytelling. Tell me about how great your product is. Tell me about the people that want to buy it and make it really easy for me to buy, which is a totally different creative challenge.
So these are actually images from very short form videos, or these are just standalone images that usually?
Yeah, these are standalone images.
Okay.
They're like stimulus. I mean, there's a story there in itself. It's like a print ad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where you look at it, the boy's fallen, the mother's helping the kid to, with this Band-Aid, right?
Yeah. Yeah, the best examples of long-form content that I've kind of leaned back and watched have been driven by a very short trailer that just gets something, and then you're like, oh, you're curious, and you go and follow that, like on YouTube or something to that effect.
Yeah. Well, because kind of not to call you out, but also to call you out, is I know that in some of the pre-discussion, you were maybe the one who was a little bit the most skeptical about this idea of that at a certain point, when you are down to like 5 seconds, 6 seconds, 7 seconds and I guess video is slightly different from an image, but that is not necessarily a format in which you can effectively tell a story.
No, I mean, as Grant says, you can really tell a story in a print ad, for example, or with one picture, right? But, is it emotional? I think the question is really, does it have music to drive it further into your heart, right? Or your gut? And the point is, the future of mobile is enormous. There's 6.8 million people on Earth, 4 billion mobile phones, right? More mobile phones than clean toilets and toothbrushes. and the thing is,
it's both funny and actually kind of grim.
Right, yeah. And exponentially it will grow as we speak. And the thing is, what if we tell stories in a vertical format? Now, we're so used to looking at the world as a horizontal format. And even we do that, right? It's all horizontal formats. And cameras and even video cameras, Tom, you know this, they were designed to look at the world, horizontally. Right. And you have the pillbox, what we call that. And what if you saw the world, or you see the world in vertical format? Now, anyone that can change that and find the code to tell stories in a vertical format will inherit the Earth. I work with Facebook, on this Creative Council, and we are trying to find ways with clients at Ogilvy, how to tell stories in vertical format. Look at the world vertically. I saw some experiment, and it's incredible. And that's the future of storytelling. And I brought something to show you. Before we start seeing this, I want to say that this is for Samsung, and we worked with Samsung Mobile. And it's very aggressive company. And we're telling stories in 10 seconds, 15 seconds. And the thing here is we are working on the part that's B2B, business to business. Now, B2B doesn't have to be B to boring. I mean, the last time I checked, business people are people too. They have emotions.
Sometimes, yeah.
Most times, I think. So I want to show you this clip that's shot by a very famous director. So can you play the clip, please, Samsung?
That seagull's not going to steal my phone, is it?
That's great. Okay, that's storytelling. It's got protagonists. It has a desire, right? It's got feelings. It's got a hero. And, the hero is trying to steal this power, the power of the phone. Tries to fly away, loses the phone. So very short, 15-second story.
Wait,
Shot by a famous director called Siegel.
Wait, so was that just user-generated, or was that actually you somehow trained a seagull to pick up the phone and fly with it?
And this is like, it really connected with the millennials. I hate to use the word millennials, but the audience out there. It really connected because there's a story arc there, right? You saw that. I mean, somebody's trying to film the family playing in the background, and the seagull comes into the picture and steals the phone, flies away, too heavy, drops it.
Wait, no, but I'm serious. Did you just go out and find that video, essentially?
Yeah.
So that was just something that had existed?
Just hacking popular culture.
So, I mean, one of the other points that you brought up that I think is interesting, because it's certainly something internally that we're having a lot of discussion around at TechCrunch and at our parent company with the name Oath, which I don't like, but we're going to put that aside right now, which is vertical, right? Which seems like on some level should be a very intuitive. It's not like a dramatic switch, like to go from like a horizontally oriented to a vertically oriented, but at the same time, at least to me, viscerally, it feels very, very different. I mean, maybe Kai, we'll start with you, but I'll throw it out to everyone. I mean, how much of a transition is that? Is vertical video sort of the future of mobile video, and if so, how big of how important is that? How difficult is that transition going to be?
I think it will be the future because I think we are beginning to experiment with that now, and it's mind-blowing because you are starting to see the world very differently, and actually, it's great for basketball, right? Somebody once said, but not very good for tennis. But jokes aside, that's the way we view mobile. Of course, you view it this way too, but it's easier this way. But in 10 years' time, and I got into your question, Daniel, in 10 years' time, it will be screenless. There will be no screens anymore. And that's what we're talking about. You'll be pulling it out from...
so like, elaborate, when you say screenless, what do you mean by that?
Well, as Kevin Kelly says in his book, The Inevitables, it's a great book to read. And he said, we are people of the book, becoming people of the screens. And that was such an epiphany for us, because we are people of the book moving to become people of the screens. There'll be screens everywhere. Look in this room, for example. How many screens are there? And in our pockets. I carry 2 phones. And soon, they will be screenless. We can just sit here and we pull up screens back and front as we cross the road. It's going to be so exciting for shopper marketing, shopper activation.
So when you say screenless, you mean essentially that screens will be so ubiquitous that we won't think about them. That you won't think about screens. It'll just be everywhere. That'll just be the world.
AR and VR, augmented reality and virtual reality,
yeah,
will basically change the overall perception of video in 10 years, probably.
Yeah, there's lots of discussion around how Alexa and Amazon is kind of destroying the long tail brand. So 99% of the products we buy, we don't care about the brand. So you want niche craft IPA from Brooklyn, that slowly changes into just beer, and you're speaking that into Alexa. And the notion of telling a great story to build up the consumer's mindset around what to choose when they're standing in front of the shelf and picking groceries goes away when you're like, hey Alexa, I want some batteries. Yeah. And all of a sudden you get the private label batteries shipped to your house the next day.
So do we think Alexa means that screens are going to disappear, or that voice is going to be the main interface for those screens?
Yeah, why would you type on a BlackBerry, Canadian BlackBerry? Why would you type on a BlackBerry? It's like, it's just horrible. Why wouldn't you just speak? And like the technology, I mean, it's all dependent on the technology, right?
Voices will take over basically, because you will have a set of assistants for shopping or for your activities. So I think screens will voice will really take over in the way how we engage with content. And 10 years from now, it's also the development of AI.
Do we all agree with that? That essentially voice is.
I don't agree with
that. You're good.
I think to my mind, something like Alexa is an example of how a phone, 411 phone line has evolved. So in the past, you had to call something out to get information. Now you just say, hey Alexa, or hey Google. I think in the same way, screens are going to become much more ubiquitous and much more part of our day-to-day experience. Instead of just existing in our pocket, they're going to be all around. We're already seeing that increasingly. So I think it's more about there are more access points, and as augmented reality comes in, the distinction between the access point and the physical world is going to become increasingly blurred. There's still a role for screens, I would say. I don't think voice will take over. Aside from anything, I have an accent, and voice recognition things do not work with me at all. Siri makes some hilarious
The British accent.
Although isn't it conversely that everyone trusts like the voice assistant when they speak in a British accent, and it seems like much more
apparently so, yeah.
So you've got to get that going for you at least. So I do want to open up to questions in just a minute, but before we do that, I think one of the things that's come up repeatedly in our discussion is the data, and specifically all this location data that phones are providing to us. Antonio, I mean, do you want to just maybe talk a little bit about the data that's available to us now and how that's going to change?
Well, I can give an example about the 24-hour fitness and Clear Channel partnership. Basically, we teamed up with Clear Channel Radar to provide data about location. So now 24-Hour Fitness was able to basically measure for the first time the impact in terms of incremental visits generated by the out-of-home campaign. Then they could also be able to see the brand affinity of people exposed to certain billboards and understand which billboards they should target because the audience is there. And then provide also information about the path these people did, like where they're coming from home, where they're coming from work. So shall we try to target billboards near business centers? This is an example of how data can inform, from mobile in a privacy-compliant way, because there are all the opportunities technologically to inform users transparently, give them the choice to be part of these panels. But for opted-in users, basically, you get a lot of data about the consumer journey in the physical world. And this information can actually inform a broad cross-channel strategy. It's not the interesting mobile data for mobile campaigns, but because they can help in shaping a strategy across out-of-home, digital, connected TV as well, and they can help storytellers as well in understanding which insights and how they could improve the story. And also about the short format. It is true that now the format have to be short, but thanks to the data, you can build a personalized ongoing story. If you know that a person is a mom, you can try to reach this person with stories across a larger time frame. So again, I believe the data from from the consumer journey in the physical world, consider that 93% of the shopping in the US economy, the consumer spending still takes place offline, is going to be a next wave exactly as it was the analytics on e-commerce, and inform like mobile as the heart and the pillar of the entire cross-channel strategy to bridge multiple access points and do multi-touch attribution.
Right, so the data sort of circling back to our initial discussion, but omnichannel is that it means that the storytelling is less about what's the one thing I'm seeing now, but that you can, with some degree of reliability,
some degree of reliability, of course, and of course creativity is always key, but you can get the infos that can
really help. I'd like to show you something on data that we used. It's intercepting Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia, as we all know, is one of the largest banks of data, information in the world. And I'd like to show you a spot here that we did with, to your point, Grant, Alexa. You talk about Alexa and Hello Google. Can we play the BK spot, please?
Listen, Burger King, quit messing with my mind. Quit messing with my emotions.
You're watching a 15-second Burger King ad, which is unfortunately not enough time to explain all the fresh ingredients in the Whopper sandwich. But I got an idea. Okay, Google, what is the Whopper burger?
According to Wikipedia, the Whopper is a burger
consisting of a flame-grilled quarter-pound beef patty,
sesame seed bun, mayonnaise, lettuce, tomato,
pickles, ketchup,
and sliced onion.
The problem is the definitions are coming from the Whopper's Wikipedia page.
People trolled the absolute hell out of Burger King by constantly changing what Wikipedia said.
Patty made with 100% medium-sized child.
Wikipedia's locked it down, although oddly they've locked it with the promotional copy.
And after a few back and forth entries, Burger King eventually restored the original content.
Google says it made changes to stop its devices from responding to Burger King's marketing stunt.
At first, Google had said it would fix it, but then apparently Burger King released additional ads last night that still trigger it, so wow.
Okay, Google.
Okay, Google, what is
the Whopper
burger?
Oh, it did work.
It did work.
These were the results.
9.3 billion global impressions, $35 million in earned media, more than 15 million organic views online. Trending topic on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Google Trends. Burger King's most talked about TV spot in history. Started a debate around the limits of advertising and invasive technology.
Listen, was this innovative? Yes. It's pretty smart, but the future does scare me.
And also, it does shine a light on the very real problem we're going to have with integrated smart households.
The 15-second ad was a first of its kind.
Okay, Google. Thank you.
Whatever.
All right, so there's so many questions I could ask about that, but since we only have a few minutes left, I did want to also throw it open to the audience. So if you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone so that everyone else can hear your question. Anyone have any questions? Go ahead. Yes.
So I'm really interested in this idea of sort of the vertical format, and I think we've seen that with mobile, with Snapchat and Instagram, and I'm just curious if you guys have any thoughts on what putting storytelling in the hands of the users is going to do, especially for advertisers. I think Business Insider this week just posted an article about how brands are starting to go straight to influencers, and just what is storytelling, like with tools like Instagram Story, do for our industry?
Yeah, I'll start with that. So I think that's a super interesting question. So the biggest challenge we see with the vertical video format is a lot of big, and I'm talking big brands, are trying to repurpose existing creative, and to Kai's point, it's really hard to do that. The shift into user-generated content, so if you're a brand like Dove that was mentioned, you have a pretty strong brand identity, and so the result of that is you take control of that story. You can take control of every piece of creative that's done so that you make sure it maps. But then the flip side is, how do I use user-generated content to create this authentic content so it's more trustworthy if it comes from the user? The challenge is those things don't consistently match up. And so you get content that comes back. As a brand, you're like, that's not on brand. There's all these reasons why, and you can never expect it. You can never plan for it. And so operationally, doesn't make a lot of sense. And so where we've seen success is where, influencers or some type of influencer where you're providing guidelines and say it has to kind of look like this, and then allowing a lot of flexibility and freedom as being really, really effective. It's actually interesting, a lot of the production levels and the examples that you show, it's all user-generated. Yeah. Like it's not that traditional agency overproduction.
That's right. It's democratized. And I think at the end of it, it's still the emotion.
Yeah.
I mean, you can treat it like, that's got to have a gift. In other words, you've got to give, either you give entertainment, you entertain, or utility, like your app, Tom. That's useful. So you're giving that usefulness, to the audience, or you entertain the audience. It's not a GIF, but it's a gift.
Right.
But
a lot of good puns on stage today.
But jokes aside, I think at the end of the day, it will be about the relevance to the brand you're talking to. It has to be, it's got to have brand relevancy, right? No matter where you're from, what you're selling. What is the role of the brand in your story? I think you just got to get back to that, the role of the brand and the idea. The idea is still king. We have data, we have technology, we have screens, different kinds of media, but it's still the idea.
But to bring that full circle, we consistently see, so you've got this data set, you've got this distribution platform, creative is the barrier. So right now you can target anyone on Facebook with a personalized one-on-one ad, but what are you going to serve them? The same ad that you're going to serve everybody else, because it's the same piece of creative. So you have to find those scalable ways to create that on-brand content.
Operations challenge.
Right. Do we have any last quick questions? All right, looks like we're good then. So thank you so much to our panelists. Awesome work, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.